Vandals defaced a statue of Jewish Holocaust victim Anne Frank.
Disturbing rise of violent anti-Semitic incidents in the United States.
The front page of the website now sells one single shirt, a t-shirt with a swastika.
I honestly think that Hitler was a good guy. He fought for his country. He wanted to purify it by kicking the greedy Jews out.
I think you could say, I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
This video may be disturbing to some viewers. It's about one of the darkest chapters in all of human history, but it's also probably the most important video I've ever made. It's my personal experience from Auschwitz-Birkenau, a Nazi concentration camp that's been liberated exactly 80 years ago. What you're about to see is not easy to watch, but I feel like it's necessary. Because there's this phrase connected to Auschwitz, which is never forget. And I feel like especially recently, it looks like we might have forgotten some of the details and horrors that happened in Auschwitz. The tour begins in silence. You walk through this narrow concrete tunnel and a monotone voice reads the names of the victims. That's when it first hits you. All those people had names, they had stories, they were probably afraid, and I couldn't help myself but imagine what the person looked like. What did they feel like when they were there? People from all across Europe were forced onto the trains, not regular trains, but cattle carts, just empty train car with bucket as a toilet. The trains apparently were filled with people so much so that they couldn't even sit down. And the longest transport took 10 days. It was from Greece, and many people died along the way because there was no water, there was no food. And the Nazis used false promises and lies. They told people that they were relocating them for work, to take only essential stuff, and as soon as they arrived, they learned that that was a lie.
On the second or third day, when people started dying in the car, that was a relief. Dead bodies could be stacked like cordwood, and that created a little more space.
On the other side of the tunnel is the gate, the infamous gate that reads Arbeit macht frei, which is the work will set you free, which is quite a sadistic joke because the freedom that work is supposed to bring you is death. Close behind the gate is a building 24, which was used by Nazis as a brothel. Apparently the women were given a choice to go into sexual slavery or be worked to death. They were promised better living conditions and other things like food, but it was also a lie, and the women there usually died within 3 months. Now, there are two photographs that were taken by the prisoners, but in order to understand how they were taken, we need to understand who took them. They were taken by the Sonderkommando. Sonderkommando were people who were forced to carry dead bodies into the ovens, but before that they had to pull out their golden teeth and stuff like that. And they managed to find it in themselves to somehow smuggle a camera and take pictures, 2 pictures actually, to document what had happened there, because they realized that they were essentially witnessing crimes against humanity. One of the pictures shows a pile of dead bodies being burned, and another shows a group of naked women being forced into the gas chambers, some of them pregnant. When I first saw these photos, I was horrified, because it's one thing to learn about this stuff, but seeing it for yourself is something else. The women in that photo were forced into showers, or what they thought was showers, and they were all essentially poisoned by Cyclone B, which is cyanide-based, so all the people suffocated to death within minutes. And then the Sonderkommando were tasked with removing golden teeth and other things of value from the bodies, putting the bodies into the ovens and burning the bodies. The photographs, of course, were taken in secret. Somehow the members of Sonderkommando managed to smuggle a camera and took these 2 photos. They knew they were risking their lives, and they were routinely killed because they were witnesses of probably the worst things that had happened in Auschwitz. What I was really surprised by was that there were torture rooms even in Auschwitz. In Building 11, There were standing cells where people were essentially tortured by standing in a chimney-like structure until they died of exhaustion. In Building 5, what you see is what was left behind. Things like shoes, toothbrushes, eyeglasses, suitcases. There's one room where photography and video is strictly prohibited. Inside of that room, behind the glass, there's over 2 tons of human hair. Upon arrival, the prisoners' heads were shaven for 2 reasons. 1, to strip them of their identity, and 2, because Nazis were using the hair in things like mattresses and insulation and stuff like that. What I remember the most from that room is a single long braid of hair, still perfectly woven, cut clean from someone's head. I stood there staring at it, frozen. I kept imagining the person that this hair used to belong to, what she had been through, what was it like. It was heavy. Approximately 802 people attempted to escape Auschwitz, and about 144 made it out. Most famous escapees were Rudolf Vrba and Adolf Wetzler, who alerted the world about what was happening in Auschwitz. The SS soldiers who ran the place volunteered to be there because the other option was to go to war, and they were relocated there with their families, and they had quite pleasurable life. Auschwitz didn't start with gas chambers. It started with hate, with polarization, with people looking the other way. It started with words.
People who were too weak or too old or too sick, who couldn't go on a forced march, were put in a basement in an infirmary and left. And that was my mother.
Everybody else was dead. And we arrived inside. And what we saw inside is unbelievable. Anyway, 3 days later, we were liberated. My cousin dies in my arm the night after liberation. Why? Why was I chosen to survive all that hell? The only answer I seem to find is that God needed a witness, someone who can talk about it, tell the story, because most of us couldn't.
This place isn't just a memorial. It's a warning. What happened here can happen again.